Our feature tonight is a member of this community. She is someone who has inspired us since we first met her. She is one of the best performers I've ever seen, and her recently released award-winning chapbook is here, and you can buy a copy of that tonight, called To That Mythic Country Called Closure. It's an amazing book. If you don't have it yet, I would recommend picking it up. And we've wanted to have her as a feature here for a while. I asked her quite some time ago. She asked me to hold off, and then when the anthology that she'll also be reading from tonight was coming around, she asked if we could do something special for National Poetry Month with this anthology, and I agreed. It's a really amazing new book called The Widow's Handbook. It's the first anthology of poems by widows, and you know, it's my great pleasure to introduce one of the best we have here in the community, Em.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. This feels like being with family in the living room, so thank you all for having me and for being here with me. Thank you. Thank you, Chris, especially for that, reading that song from my mom. That was my mom's favorite song. And once when I was little, my mother always used to sing constantly. She didn't even know she was doing it. And she was giving me a bath, and that song came on, so she started singing it, and I started singing different words. And I think I said, "People who need purple," and she started giggling. And so, you know, when you're little, when you get a giggle, you keep doing it. So I kept doing the whole thing, and she almost fell in the bath. So it's a meaningful song for us. As Chris said, I'm going to be reading mostly from the Widow's Handbook, entirely from the Widow's Handbook, and what I'll be doing is reading other people's work. I'll do one of my own if we have time at the end. And I have a lovely surprise guest. Tony Partington's going to help me out, so we're going to alternate through this evening. She's going to read a poem, and I'm going to read a poem. So you'll have more than one voice to listen to, because this is the voices of many people. As Chris said, it's the first anthology of its kind. I'll give you a little background on it. The editors of the Widow's Handbook, their names are Jacqueline Lapidus and Lise Men. They were college classmates. They re-met at their 25th reunion, and then they started writing to each other. They both experienced the loss of a significant other. And Jacqueline didn't start writing about it until a year after her significant other died. And Lise was so devastated by the loss. It was her second husband. She found herself unable to talk about it, and the only thing that she could do was write poems. And they started to exchange them. And then they decided, you know, we must not be the only ones out there to have experienced this, and wouldn't this make for a great anthology? And so that was the germ of the idea. And they put out a call for submissions. And 87 contemporary widows were selected to be in the book. I'm in the book. They selected 5 of my pieces, and I'm very proud to be in it. And it's legally married women or not, both straight and gay, and they come from all over the United States and England. Some of them are published widely. 2 are poets laureate of their states. Others are less well known, and some appear for the first time in the book. The book also includes work by big people that you will probably recognize: Mary Oliver, Tess Gallagher, Maxine Kunin, who we just lost a few months ago. And the foreword is by Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And it is about widowhood, but if you've experienced loss of any kind, I think you can relate to the poems in it. And I'll just read this to you to explain some of the poems. With courage and occasional wry humor, these women write about mourning and its rituals, isolation, work, supportive people or lack thereof, coping strategies and spiritual resources. Along the way, they encounter bureaucratic nonsense, unfamiliar hardware, well-intentioned but thoughtless remarks, insidious depression, poignant memories, absorbing work, spiritual revelations, and unexpected lust. A few navigate the risky seas of dating and new relationships. They write frankly about going forward. Their poems are honest, beautiful, and accessible. The collection celebrates the strategies widows learn and the resources on which they draw once the first flurry of tasks is over and shock has turned to the realization that nothing will ever be the same. And that's very true. So, Tony is going to come up and join me. What we're going to do is she's going to read on this and proceed that way. The book is split into sections. They sort of coincide with the path of grief, although everyone's path is different. They're called Bereft and Mourning is the first section, Memories, Ghosts, and Dreams, Coping, more or less. Usually it's less for a lot of us, and then A Different Life. So we'll be reading some poems from each of those sections. Did you want the mic? Carry on. And Tony's first one is by one of the book's editors.
Okay. From the first section by Jacqueline Lapidus, this is called Natural Disaster. After you died, the planet cracked and flooded. Tourists swept away by tidal waves in Asia. The laughing city of New Orleans reduced to rubble and mud. Every newscast showed survivors stranded on rooftops, waving crude signs, begging for rescue. Such devastation swamped my own small grief. But the day your so-called friends gathered without me to bray about your wonderful life, I sat huddled on the sofa as the snow fell. I did not care at all about the refugees or global warming. You, no doubt, would have got on a plane to report, though not to do what could be done. You would have teased their stories out, black grannies coughing as they were carried from the boats, children without shoes, yet their dead were no deader than mine as I cried for you. Dear, stubborn, foolish man who dragged heavy furniture in from the porch and refused to ask for help.
And I forgot to say, here's what the book looks like. It's without all of the green little tabs. Not in the standard copies. And it's by Kent State University Press. I'll be doing one called Salvage by Jessica D. Koenig. And I tried to pick poems that I sort of related to, not necessarily that told my exact story, but ones that I think tell universal stories about all of us. Again, Salvage. To reverse prolapse, surgeons hold up the bladder with the skin of a cadaver. Science stitches up what gravity pulls down. Cadaver. More genteel to say organ transplant. Better to say donor. Distasteful discussions of corneas, skin, lungs, heart. The cash and carry business that goes on at night might get detected. But with casket closed, what goes unnoticed goes unnoticed. Picked clean as a car abandoned in Camden. Hubcaps, headlamps, grill work for sale. The business of leftovers, like the time we unearthed the steering arm and hood latch for the Renault at a junkyard outside Worcester. Kept that old hatchback running. So at the funeral home, I never checked. I did not ask to look. With no formaldehyde, wax, or makeup, a night and a day would only make things worse. To the end, your skin remained taut, unblemished, youthful. Cancer and infection rot from the inside out. Your organ donor cards, a useless stub. I did not want to look at you. Contaminated, not even good for parts.
Left Behind, Left Behind by Barbara J. Collignon. Hammer on the landing, pliers on the floor, drill bits on the windowsill, paintbrush near the door. Trowel here, garden gloves there. I can trace your footsteps, attic to cellar, driveway to garden, by what you left behind, as though you planted clues for me to find, to be certain I will follow.
This one is also about organ donation, but it's from a little different angle. This woman actually was able to make the organ donations, and it's called Apart by Aileen Sulis. I've given you away. I don't know who got your lungs, or eyes, or bones, but your heart went to a young woman with 2 small children. She wrote to say that it will slowly give way to her body's disease, but not before she sees her children grow. Are you breathing in the chest of a man just down the street? Do you look at a lake through the eyes of a boy who has only known the sound of its lapping waves, or the chill of his first plunge of summer? Can you climb a mountain in the now sturdy legs of a woman on the other side of the country? The more those legs take you away from me, and your heart pumps in another, the more you breathe to a different rhythm, and each of us sees people and places the other will never know, the more my empty heart wonders if we have met again, neither of us able to recognize that we are together still.
From the section Memories, Ghosts, and Dreams, this is called Somewhere by Jane Hayman. You have been sleeping now for over 3 months. Sleep is what Merwin calls it in his poem, Good Night. Sleep softly, my old love, he writes, without end in the dark. You are my old love, but I don't think you're asleep. If you are, it's time to wake up. Poets speak of death as sleep and night. Dylan Thomas called it the darkness of the darkness. I would rather think of you in heaven, your kind of heaven, which I picture as the Rambles in Barcelona on a sunny October day. You are sitting in an outdoor cafe, talking and laughing, drinking beer and smoking one cigarette after another. Each cigarette is stamped, good for celestial health, increases wingspan, and strengthens flying ability.
I like that one in particular. My late husband was a smoker. So this is another rather amusing one. It's called The Machines And I went up to Seattle to read, and I actually got to hear the author of this one read, and she was terrific. Her name is Jacqueline Cudler. Let's see if I can do her justice. First, the grill ignition failed. Then, not 10 days later, and 2 months after you died, the fridge condenser went, but slowly. For days, I watched the glacier crawling down along the back wall. It wasn't too much longer before the timers in the double oven and the upright freezer quit, as if some universal clock had simply stopped somewhere, all dials fixed at midnight. By his 4th call, the national appliance guy opined he'd never witnessed such a run of luck. Everything breaking down like that around me. He hoped, with eyes accustomed to assessing hairline cracks and fissures, that I was holding up okay. I told him how my days, amazingly enough, go well. I wake, bathe, lunch with friends, call the kids, and late at night, when I sit down at the table, I light a candle at your place. Oh, I'm doing well enough, I said, but given their histories and the nature of their finely wired dispositions, I wouldn't presume to speak for the machines.
East Avenue Gulf by Marilyn Bates. Richie kissed the starchy pavement when the ozone cracked a comma in the sky and the mole on his neck took root, sending him to soil he loved so well. Like a lit fuse, he gardened with a fury around the Gulf station. He ran like a pit stop. Now, nothing stirs in the darkened building. Gas pumps seem beheaded. Graying aluminum hangs a dirty bib around a garden that is no more. The only movement, a note flapping on the door, thanking stranded patrons he rescued on the highway. I gauged my safety by the vigor of his hair, watched it wane from Rome to Dunn, imagined serrated blocks of chaos when they take the building down. No more bougainvillea on the trellis, forked tongue of iris or bees sucking larkspur. His obituary hangs on my refrigerator, as if evoking luck when on the road alone. I touch it in passing.
And then this is another one of those little things that go wrong kind of things, where you just wish your husband was still there. It's called Exterminator by Holly Zeeb. He came in his white hazmat suit, veil like a halo, spray gun in hand. You wouldn't have believed the carpenter ants, wasps, meal moths swarming biblically that day. You, gone 10 months, yet they were abundant and intent on their business. He fingered the dust, inspecting for ant parts, recommended the 450 treatment, set out a seductive pheromone trap for the moths in the hall, doused the wasps in their secret hole in the garden. They furied up around him, but he was young, immune, wrapped in his white cotton clothes like an angel, as if he could protect me. A hitman, claiming to love his work, as if he knew everything of death.
The Wild Things by T.J. Banks. True to form, you didn't make your goodbye an easy conventional one. a rain-slick road, a hard-to-handle van, and you were hydroplaning out of my life, out of this world, with a sound and a fury and a violence that tore my heart apart, scattering the pieces along the asphalt. The skies opened, taking your quicksilver soul up, leaving behind a crushed and bloody shell, not the body whose lines and moles I knew like my own. Weeks after you died, a deer came to the edge of your garden, the sensitivity you hid under your tomfoolery staring out of her eyes, as soul met soul in gentle greeting. And only days later, so it seemed, a hummingbird flew up to me, moving through the heavy late summer air with a joy and lightness so like yours. No conventional goodbye, no. But you spoke to me in the language we shared, our love of wild things, sending me messengers who could reach me when no one else could, letting me know you'd fallen in a good place.
And this one that I'm going to read is by the other editor, Lise Menn. And it covers something that most widows don't like to talk about, and that is going on with your life and finding new relationships. So I could relate to this one very well. It's called Troubled in the Bedroom by Lise Menn. He spends the night here, Thursday. I know you wanted this. You told me clearly, and several times. No conflict there. But this is still a widow's house. Your pictures everywhere for me to look at. Poems, tokens, little gifts between us. I've left your bureau top just as it was. Well, slightly neater. Okay, and I did cash in that jar of pennies. But here's the fancy buckle from the belt you finally and proudly wore the week before you died. The candles that we like to light, the incense burner, the statuette of Venus, and that fan. What shall I do with you when he comes over? Shove everything of you into the dresser drawer? The one that holds one pair of undershorts, your favorite Argyle socks, brown leather gloves, some incense sticks, your watch, your last new wallet with your driver's license? That pair of courting cranes, clearly a symbol. Should I hide them? And what about those candles? They won't pass for new. No more will I, nor do I want to. What can he bear of you? He knows that we were happy. I have already watched my tongue these several weeks, not told him once how tall you were, nor how we sang together long ago, nor any of 1,000 other things, and never will. If he's to be my lover, I can't let you haunt him. I keep you for myself, for joy and sorrow. But where to put you, love? Some secret altar? And shall I rescue you from the drawers each time he leaves? And stuff you in again when he comes over? I will not be swept clean of you, nor will I hobble him. Some answer must be found, and quick. It's Tuesday.
I Seek You in the Faces of Old Men by Florence Weinberger. I seek you in the faces of old men, shout into their ears, scale their craggy cheeks, touch their bald spots, tough, often bumpy, You would be that old, and I would never let you fall. I might not have overlooked your frailties. I might very well have grown impatient with your fumbling, the inadvertent moan when you turned in the bed. These old men teach me who you might have become. Some hold my elbow when we walk, say, I am still beautiful. We gentle each other. Slower to judge, we make slow love. We don't give up easily. I would love you better now than I did.
And this is the coping more or less section. And I love this one. It's called Resurrection. And it's by Catherine J. Williams. I look up inosculate, the word clunky on the tongue, like something unchewable. How can this mean to unite intimately? I think of my husband's ashes under toppled headstones on a hillock in Vermont and somehow flip to resurrection. But rising of the dead at the last day of judgment is not what I'm looking for. Closer might be resurrection fern, a drought-resistant evergreen that appears to be a ball of coiled dead leaves but revives with moisture. Back then, I peppered the world with obituaries and death notices, watching his name drop off sale flyers and water bills. The fraternity magazine he never read hung on the longest, like an ancient mariner compelled to tell its tale, even though no one was listening. A Value Village truck consumed the clothes in which he knew me. I found a new address. Yet recently, thanks are sent to Charles and Catherine for contributions made in my name only. Letters begin arriving addressed to him. In the mail today, a postcard from Gilbert School requesting news. I dial, inform the woman that my husband has been dead for 14 years. I hear her breathe, type, then state, I have entered that he is currently deceased. I say, yes, currently. But if that changes, I'll let you know. And I thought I'd do I have enough time to do one? I will do one of my own from here. I was going to memorize all these, but then my mother passed away, and so I didn't have the brain power to get them all into my head. So this one is in this Widow's Handbook. It's also in my private collection, and it's called Salt, and it deals with being a young widow and walking into a support group setting and expecting to be given support in a grieving situation, but encountering a bunch of older widows whose concerns and lives are very different from young widows. So that's what this one is all about. Salt. In this room, down a hall, at the Hopewell House, every Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 p.m., the widowed have agreed to meet to lick the salt block. My name tag reads, albino deer, recessive rarity, widow at 42. Dun-colored Helen and Marie mistaken for sheep or a goat as we draw our chairs into a circle of circumstance. Muscles in their aged faces twitch with the greed of suspicion. In the larger world, Jean and I would sit in adjoining streetcar seats, read our newspapers, and never share a headline. Even Doris, who drags the remains of a personal god at the bottom of her purse, tucked next to non-prescription reading glasses she bought on sale at Walmart, shrinks from my pink eyes. Louise has 10 grandchildren. 3 she and Harry were raising because her daughter is, well, you know, she doesn't want to say. She won't tell you either that when Harry up and died like that, some small part of her wished he'd had the decency to take those kids with him. But he never even took them to the pond. Betty lost a husband, found a lump. Ilse says, when the ambulance comes to the Ridgewood nursing home, they don't turn on the siren, for fear they'll incite a riot of dying. Ida says, yeah, she knows. She's lost 2 of them that way. I nod. Judith's raised eyebrow asks, what could one with hooves so pale know of loss? A marriage must be long to be 40 years deep, and grief is a black market business, best kept to themselves. If I taste it, others will want it. Young bucks will be dying in droves, in war, in the streets, in flaming buildings, or quietly in a bed next to me at night. That sting in the wound, that particular tang on the tongue are theirs. Keep me away from the soft. Their old ones are sanctified. Their sorrow is sacred. Denial, alive in the hide. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you to M and also to Tony Partington. There are copies of the Widow's Handbook for sale, and also to that mythic country called Closure. And they're both for sale. Take a look at those during the break. We'll come back in about 15 minutes. If for some reason you can't join us after the break, please join us again here on May 8th when our feature will be Daniel Skatchmills. Let's hear it one more time for M.